and I'm going to hide this thing. Alright, so I'm just going to go off the assumption that you don't really know JSON, that all of you. Some of you, the rest of you might know it a bit better, but basically JSON is a way to store data. Is the simplest way to think of it. It can be a file that is stored externally. It can be something you draw from a different source, and I'll go over all those things. So first of all, going into stringify. So stringify is a way in which you can take elements of a JSON array and read them and put them into kind of human speak. So this first example, I used it on CodePen. I created a little thing here. So here I've got a JSON array. Let me open that actually up in a JSON in CodePen. So I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So I've got here 3 objects in my JSON array. Name, John, age 39, city, New York. Now keep in mind these are separated by commas, so each line is separated by a comma except for the last one. And with a number, you can actually do it without the quotations and it'll work just fine. So let me increase the JavaScript, and this is all I've got here to be able to pass whatever I want. So let's say I want to draw from the name. So if I write in name here, down here it'll give me John. So what's happening here is I've got here, this is my search term, is name. So I'm getting the element by ID, which is the name, and then I'm getting the element by ID, which is the JSON. So that's all those 2 lines are. And then I'm doing an if on my search, first of all, to see if there is a search term, because if there's nothing, I don't want to do anything. So if there's nothing, I don't want to make any changes. But so with name of I'm able to pass it and find it. So then I have a little function here which searches first of all the key and value. So if key is equal to what I'm searching for, then I print that. And since I'm only printing one thing, which is, hang on, did someone say something? Oh, somewhere else. So if someone's typing, if I type like city, it will give me New York. If I do age, it'll give me 39. And I can even add lines here, so I can do like, say population, and then I can do colon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's only a population of that apparently. So if I type population now, it'll give me that. And you can format those with, I guess, extra steps, but the idea you can see there is, if obviously you'd have to search it to see if it was a number value as opposed to a string, but this just seemed like a simple way to pull an input and then produce an output. So that's parsing it. So this is assuming that normally when you're producing a JSON, you're not creating a JSON and then reading the JSON. You're pulling it from an external location. It's worth knowing as well, I want to say this early on, that if you want to try and use it in your programs, you can't, with most modern browsers, you can't actually have a JSON stored in your solution because it's kind of a privacy concern that you can read it and write to it. So usually you would have to do it from an external file. So just something to note. So most people, when they would use a JSON, it would be something from an external source, like a pulling from another website or something like that. So let's close out of that one. So that's parsing. Parsing the JSON. So we're finding a value from it. The next step, and the next thing is stringify. So stringify basically just means put it out as a string. So here I'm going to create a JSON. So I'm going to do make, model, year, and miles. So I'm going to do Ford Falcon 99, and let's go with that number again. And if I stringify it, it produces it in a JSON format. Now obviously up here you can see it's on separate lines, but and you can have it print out in JSON notation. I was running out of room down there, but you see it's the same pattern where I have the first thing, the first tag is make down here, then the make is the Ford, then comma to separate that first one, model, Falcon. So it's very much like an associative array. So each of these is, I guess, the property, and then these are the values of those properties. And so stringify basically just means it's taking a JSON. So I created first a JSON, which from here, value cars, and then I've basically through shorthand created a JSON and then stringified that JSON in that formation. So you can do that with, and I've used that in a lot of ways for any JSON that you're bringing in. You just do JSON stringify and then put in the JSON value in just like that. So it'll stringify it like that. Have I lost anyone so far?
No, I'm following.
How about you, Kenny?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So it's actually really useful. Like I went and I'll go back to some JavaScript that I was still working with earlier, and I used JSON to kind of format it and output it so I could look at the outputs. So the next thing is, and this is what I was saying before, one of the more common uses for JSON is to pull from an external website. So for example, in this case, I've got here a thing which is doing something called an XML HTTP request. Kind of a fancy word, just means it's pulling something from the internet. So I'm going to take here this web address and just show you exactly what it looks like. Because it's nothing to be it's nothing complicated. That's what is on this website, and this is unique to me. So each person that would to go to that link would see their own relative information. So this is opening a XHR, which is this, but it's opening a new XML HTTP request, and with these parameters. So it's getting the information from this website, and then true. So and then you send it, and adding an event listener, which is just something that just sees if anything changes in that. So and this is kind of complicated, and there's a lot of resources on that, and but I guess the most important thing you just look at is it's pulling information from that website, which is what we looked at, and then we're processing it. So if it was successful, is what this part is. If it was, sorry, it was my wife's phone in the background. If it was successful and if it produced a status of 200, then it was okay. And then it gives you live in, and then gives me information. And then I've also got here stringify, which is what I was talking about earlier, where I'm just passing the notify function as a stringify. So let me go into it. So if I do where do I live, it'll tell me I live in Tullahoma, Tennessee, right? And then there's all that stuff that I saw over there. That was stringify. I went to that website, and that's exactly what I saw over there. I went here, and there's all my information. So that's what I see here. I've taken that information, I've pulled it, and now I've stringified it where it can be seen. Now let me show you something cool. So WinScribe here is a I guess it's a VPN, so I can pretend I've got a different thing. So if I do that now, there we go, Financial District of New York. So that's apparently where I'm at now, which I'm not, obviously. But it's cool that it finds where you're supposed to be and produces information based on that. So that's one potential use of that, and there are obviously many other uses for that. One could be, for example, to pull weather information. It's very similar to like RSS. Like you can pull information from places and then access certain things. So I could look for, like if I wanted to, let's go into here, and let's say I wanted to just post, I don't know, let's pull it up. So let me do this again. So what have we got here? So country or time zone. Let's say I just wanted to find out the time zone. Then I can do something like we are notified.city. So that's where it says Tullahoma, and then notified.region. So I could just do notify dot time zone, and then if I do that again, it'll produce America, Chicago, just that. So you can specify information from that just by doing that. So you can do the full JSON here dot whatever the property is, and then it will produce that in a method you can work with. It's kind of cool. Have I lost anyone?
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oops.
So another cool way you can do it. So JSON doesn't have to just be used with JSON information. So I've got, for example, I'm working. This is my competency website I'm working on. So I was working on JavaScript from last week, and I haven't finished it. But I was working on where is it? Down here. Stringify. So I stringified an array. So I have here. So I've entered there just a series of values separated by commas. And then if I press add first and last, I've got here, this is my array stringified. So it's a way to be able to potentially read arrays and things like that. So it's another way of processing like an array that you might have and be able to push that information in a way that may be readable or workable. It also works with associative arrays where, for example, like before we had the make, model, year, and so forth. So if I did like vehicle assessment, here is my JSON query, but I've also got the information. I can look at it. So make, Chevrolet, model, so forth. So I've created a JSON and then stringified it. So there's a lot of different cool things you can do with JSON, and it's a cool thing you can use in other languages too. Like I'm doing a C# class this semester, and JSON's one of the file formats that we can read from. So it's a cool thing to learn about because it's cross-platform. It's not just for like HTML, JavaScript type thing, but it has multiple users in a lot of different formats. So yeah, that's it. That's all I had. Any questions?
Hey, I have one question.
Of course.
The what is it? So, how do you catch the errors?
What do you mean? Like, what kind of errors are you talking about?
So, say you've made that request, an HTTP request, and it doesn't come back, or there's a network issue while it's requesting. How would you go ahead catching that?
Well, see here, I've got this is my pull request, and this is telling me that the ready state was successful, and the status was. This is in the shorthand version. This was telling me that it was successful, and if it was, to work with it. So I could add an else on the end of that. So let's go to CodePen and look at that. So this is where I was pulling the information about myself. So if I did an else on the end of this, so there's that. So I could do else and then something else. So this is where you might do error handling right here. So you can check to see if it was successful, and if it was, do all this, otherwise do this. So there's plenty of documentation available on how you can deal with failed attempts. So let me just do one thing. So let's JSON 2. That's obviously going to fail because that website doesn't exist. So I'd need to put something like, how about we do this, equals error. Oops, error. See, so it told me that failed. See that?
Ah, great.
So because I changed the URL, now it doesn't work, and so it picked up, wait, this didn't work, so let's show that there was an error. Whereas if I go back now and delete that and produce it, it will now show me everything correctly. So yeah, there's ways to do it just by this kind of thing. So you can do else, whatever. Of course, I mean, showing no information is also an error. So there, it should produce an error in itself. See, if I keep pressing it, nothing will happen. So that's another way of presenting an error, is just doing nothing. But yeah, if you want to do something fancy, you can always just add extra lines, do an else, and so forth. Any other questions? No?
No.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for paying attention, and thanks for coming along. I was glad to have everyone here for this one.
Great. Thanks a lot, hey.
Of course. Who's got next week? Where's the? I'll stop my sharing.
I think that's me.
Okay. Cool. Well, good luck. I think I have part of next week as well. I think it's there's 2 subjects next week, unless we want to switch it up. But same time
Wait,
next
what
week.
are we doing next week?
Let me pull it up. Hold on. Topics. Next week is local storage. No, it's just you. Sorry, I was wrong. See, I've got that one, so I thought it was together. But local storage, API, storing, and everything like that. So yeah, that's you.
Oh, okay.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for catching up. That's nice and short and sweet.
Yep.
All right, catch ya.
Cool, then. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.